Small side note here, but just while walking up, I found a bunch of stuff. It looks like a person just went missing all of a sudden. Like, all of their clothes are here, a somewhat expensive looking bag, but I don't know how bags look. And even this little notepad that I'm sure if I read it has little notes about, you know, how if they go missing, where we should look for them. It looks like someone suspiciously just vanished into thin air here. Maybe it's from the coronavirus, ha ha ha. Hello, I'm Toycat, and I'm currently at a place called Corona Park, or Corona Heights. It's a place I saw on Google Maps with a name I thought was topical, and I could be like, haha, isn't that funny? But more seriously, it is an amazing view from the top here of San Francisco, California, which, fun fact, is where I currently am. I feel like a wide-angle lens is probably the worst way to capture a skyline, but something interesting that you'll see when you look at the skyline of a place like San Francisco, which actually isn't very iconic in my opinion, and also is now behind some trees. But the interesting thing when you look at a city like San Francisco is you can see all of these individual huge buildings, except you can't, right? You don't see the individual buildings. What you instead see is you see this skyline that, this just view that collects from all of them together. You get this, this is why skylines like, New York City, you don't know all the individual buildings, but you know what they look like together. You know, how they combine, despite the fact that they are very different, very individualized towers. And something sort of that kind of reminds me of something I've been thinking about a lot, which is the inability for humans to abstract and sometimes to see the bigger picture, and even sometimes the smaller picture too. Even to look at one of these individual buildings and to acknowledge that it is just a single building. So just to show you it again, because again, I'm walking down Corona Heights. It was a random little thing I just decided to come up to because it was nearby, and you know what? Corona Heights, more like coronavirus, right? But yeah, I'm in San Francisco, California for about 2 weeks. Suspiciously around Valentine's Day. Maybe that's related, maybe it's not. But I'm here in San Francisco, California, and to get here I was asked a few questions about the coronavirus, and I, obviously made my joke about coronavirus, don't even like corona, didn't go down well, and apparently they actually wanted to know about my visits to China 9 months ago. Something that's unrelated in every way to coronavirus, right? Like I went there for 23 hours, I think it was, to Shanghai. I might have made a video about it here on this channel, in fact. But the interesting thing about this is it proves a point, even at the highest level, about how we see risk and how much we fear risk, how much we have panic, and this moral thing kind of built into us on every level, even on the highest, most official levels that don't even make sense. And obviously I can just say, well, it's not really logical to be scared of it, but what does that really mean by itself, right? Saying that doesn't make too much sense. So instead, let me talk about how risk is actually something quite valuable, because if you think about, biologically speaking, the way we are as animals and the way any animal has to be, when you touch a hot stove, don't touch the hot stove again. Next time you see a hot stove, you're like, that hurt, I don't want to do that again. But there are some things that when we do them, we can't choose to not do another time. You can't choose to just not jump off the, you can't learn from doing by jumping off one of these, what will they be, like 50, 80 story buildings, because you know what happens is you die the first time you do it. So you need to have some mechanism to protect you from things that you can't just do once and then fail. Things like these buildings. So you've got fear built into you, which tells you, don't do that, you might die. The first time you have an interaction, even just being on top of a tall building, a lot of people have like fear of even being up there, but when you look over the edge, there's this like call of the void, for me at least, but there's this feeling of just like, oh god, get away from this right now. Even if I have no intention to jump, and I usually don't, I mean, fun fact, I don't want to jump off most buildings, but there's this just intense fear of like, man, I don't want to be falling down there, so I'm gonna get away from this ledge just in case just to get further away from the sequence of events where that can happen. And so yeah, fear makes a lot of sense on some level, you can argue, because yeah, we need a way to protect ourselves from things that haven't happened to us yet, things we haven't gauged the risks of by, again, touching a hot stove, because some things that you do, you only get to do once and then you're gone, you're dead forever. Fear of, I don't know, say snakes in the bush is actually pretty logical, because people who fear snakes are less likely to die than people who don't. There's at least, you can biologically think about it, but also you can think about it on just like a, I don't know, like Darwinism, evolution level, just like, oh yeah, we need to evolve the ability to not die to stupid dumb stuff, because otherwise the ones of us who don't who aren't predisposed to that reproduce much less often. And so as a result of this, it kind of makes sense to fear things, but the levels we do it to and the ways we do it are really quite illogical and damaging in ways that we don't think about often or really at all. So I don't know, to give a good example of what I mean by that, let's think about two big things. We can mention coronavirus all day because it's topical, but think about plane crashes. So in Iran recently, there was a Ukrainian Airlines flight that was shot down over, if I'm not mistaken, over Ukraine, there was a KLM flight that went down. It was full of Dutch nationals. It might have been Air Malaysia, honestly. And then there was a Malaysian Airlines flight that just went missing somewhere over Malaysia. We don't know where exactly it went. There's a lot of conspiracies about what exactly happened there. But like, there's been some plane crashes, 3 big ones, I'd say, in the last 5 years. There's been some smaller ones too, but big plane crashes for big places where you're going between. But these big plane crashes play hugely into people's minds about how safe it is to travel by plane. And this is something that's, I would say, obviously it makes sense because most people don't fly very often, and since you last flew, there's been a huge change. That huge change, whether it be the flight going missing, also there's a lot of broken glass at the ground here, whether that be the flight that went missing, whether that be the flight that was shot down by the Iranian, over temporary the temporary heightened tensions, and therefore things changed. I can see why you reevaluate that to some level, but also you shouldn't. The thing you should be reevaluating is every single day you decide to get in a car. Cars kill, again, it's some ungodly number of people every single year. In the US it's estimated like 35,000, but to give a safe worldwide estimate, we'll undershoot it at like 100,000 people a year die in car accidents, ignoring the financial damage, which think about how many cars are getting destroyed this way. Will someone think of the cars? But ignoring the financial damage to this, the cost in lives of this is huge, and is so much more, even as a proportion, even as a percentage of miles driven / traveled or whatever, than it is. There's a lot of orange signs here, like hinting I should not be here, but it is hugely a much higher number than the number of people who die by plane travel, as you might expect. And a similar thing happens with, if we take, again, an exact parallel here of like coronavirus and the flu. Coronavirus has killed a handful of people, most of which are isolated to a specific geographic region, which you don't live in if you're watching this video, fun fact, because China blocks off the internet. But most of the people who die of this thing are in a specific region. Most people who got this thing are in a specific region, with very few exceptions. It's going to be a very small blown thing, but people are making huge preparations for this that they don't make for the illness that kills literally hundreds of thousands of people every single season. The flu, again, especially for vulnerable groups, but that's the same with coronavirus is. If you get it as a healthy adult, you're actually pretty fine most of the time. It's not going to be good. You'll have to self-quarantine. There's a chance something goes bad, but that's true of getting the flu as well. That's true of getting pretty much any major illness, I would say. There are serious risks to these things. This isn't the way I'm meant to be going, I don't think. Yeah, I want to go that way. Working your way around like tricky trails that are also on a mountain, really challenging. Working your way around important medical information, like about what risks you should be protecting yourself from, also very tricky. So what tends to spread, instead of reasoned information about, oh yeah, why don't you get a face mask to protect yourself from the flu? That never spreads, that never becomes widespread, because there's no panic inciting event. There's no event in people's mind that starts this whole, oh God, we should do something about this moment. But instead, what does spread, what does become a big thing is, a big scary event in the news that like, there's this thing that could theoretically be wildly deadly beyond our dreams, like the thing that ends humanity. It's theoretically possible, even though it's always been theoretically possible that something could come out midair. But once you see something tangible in the flesh that has hurt some people, killed some people, and disrupted some things, that's when you start to react to it. And I think this human fear, this human worry about things, regardless of how likely they are to happen, sometimes it's actually weaponized for good. I'd say insurance is a really bad idea to make on the individual level, because let's just say you have $1 million house, $100 a month to insure it against potentially burning down or anything like that. Again, most of the time when a house burns down, it looks like it's tragic, but really it's just a lot of insurance paperwork to fill out, because again, you pay $100 a month. Now when your house burns down, insurance companies got you, because most people's houses don't burn down, so the very few that do can be covered by the insurance company. And therefore we're basically gambling, because it's the same thing as gambling $100 every month with a tiny chance of winning $1 million, except this tiny chance of $1 million only pays out when your house burns down. It's the same thing as gambling in that the house always wins. Insurance companies, very big companies, a lot of money, fun fact. But it's the same thing, but we're doing something that's kind of bad individually for the collective good because of this panic. This panic is leading us to make, let's call them inefficient decisions, but let's just say not the most financially gaining decisions in the world. We make these decisions against our own necessarily best interests, against not necessarily what's best for us, but it makes a better good for everyone. Again, houses burning down is less of a, you know, destructive factor for the world. This is not the right way, but I'm just sticking to it at this point. It's less of a destructive factor than it used to be, and I feel like this this whole thing of using fear as a way to get things done works in the exact opposite when it comes to, let's say, plane crashes, but more specifically to coronavirus. Because, you know, I'm in Corona Park, and you know, I have no chance of catching coronavirus because I don't even like beer. But more seriously, I reckon subconsciously, whether people are not, even stupid connections like this, just because of the potential theoretical, like the connection in your head that you don't think through, you just work on. I think the amount of people, fewer people who go here, you know, it's a busy Saturday, or it should be a busy Saturday, but I see next to no one here. I would be willing to bet that Corona beer sales have gone down some percentage worldwide as a result of just the subconscious associations people make. That is dumb. I think we can all agree, like, you know, if you buy face masks to protect yourself, at least there's some argument you're protecting yourself against everything, and there is some theoretical connection between, you know, buying a face mask and the coronavirus. But if we look at, like, stupid associations like that, it's a fear-based decision that is making us make inefficient decisions for ourselves and for everyone. And you know, by itself, whatever, but this kind of turns out to be a reverse of the insurance situation, where we all make imperfect decisions for ourselves, because realistically speaking, if everyone just put $100 of their own money into an account every month, then most, you know, as a whole, we'd end up better, but it'd be unevenly distributed. So at least it's like a fair way to spread that risk. But instead, with things like the coronavirus fear, we end up with like widespread, I mean, xenophobia is one example, like people, you know, just Chinese passport holders, Chinese residents, anyone who's been to China, again, within any amount of time, is having a much harder time. And the economic inefficiency of this, the shutdown on trade in China, it's going to affect the world economy by some percent. I mean, the world economy is going to grow slower than it would otherwise, and that seems dumb on the surface, like, oh, it's not even really a big risk, but it is a huge downside. Like, the global wealth we have to deal with problems, struggles, you know, the ones we have already that aren't, you know, you're thinking about every day, like global wealth, health crises and wealth crises and all these sorts of things, the amount of money we have to deal with those is going down because of stupid fears about a very niche virus, which is, by the way, viruses of this type have happened, immunoviruses, I believe they're called, have happened within you know, China already, twice within this last 20 years already. It's every single time it's overblown, it's used as a tool to boost you know, like fear of a region, and it's used as a tool by so many people to boost fear, for, you know, to bring that into their own causes. Because one of the things I've always thought about is how I have a not to call out my stepmother, but to call out my stepmother, I remember she shared a post once that's like, oh, don't flash your lights at people, it's a gang sign, where they shoot the first person that flashes the lights at them. It's something that someone just came up with out of thin air, out of fear, this just desire for, like, everyone has paranoia, everyone has a certain amount of, like, ooh, better watch out for that built into them, because the fear of things you haven't done is logical on some level, but is used by people to its extreme. And once you hear about someone's fear, you take that fear on yourself, and it means that fears spread much faster than correct information can. Correct information is really actually quite hard to spread in comparison to how easy it is to spread just don't do something because there's a chance it might kill you. Me standing somewhere near the ledge of a tall building won't ever kill me, realistically speaking, but my brain has that, you know, fear, has the things it's seen in movies of people jumping up and dying, in the same way that I won't ever die in a plane. When I get turbulence, every now and then I think, like, man, I'm midway there of the Atlantic, it's like 2 hours to get to the nearest airport to land. I think about these things, but they're dumb thoughts, they're not practical, real things in the real world, because we think about things that we've seen and heard about, but what we see and hear about are things from movies, which are there to be most dramatic, and things we hear from other people who are spreading fears based on not real data, not you know, things like that, but instead based on what they hear. And that's why when the news happens, when there's this unknown quantity, a brand new virus that's never been out there, theoretically it could become a devastating thing that ends humanity, and that theoretically it could leads us to making loads of bad decisions on the micro level. Things like, I don't know, let's just be simple and say, oh yeah, fun fact here, I have no idea where I've ended up, but not where I wanted to. But even past the big caution sign that's been torn down. But it leads us to making loads of inefficient decisions on the societal level because they feel good on the personal level. Like, to protect yourself by, you know, to cancel a trip to China, which a lot of people have chosen to do, like Hong Kong, China, Taiwan, Macau. They're all having huge downswings in tourism, in trade, and it's, you know, it's going to be a serious issue affecting a lot of people on the ground there because of these fears. We're making individual decisions that feel good to, you know, for this fear part of our brain, that are collectively hurting us as a whole. And in that way, it's fear working as kind of reverse insurance, I guess, in that way. We're making decisions that feel good personally, but they're actually horrific on the widespread human-wide scale, on the us as a species level. And that's something I think about a lot because it's just a bummer. It's sad how often these emotions can be used to guide us in the wrong directions. Because I see this, even like politically speaking, right? Like, we've kind of resigned ourselves to fear is the way that people win elections. Fear is the way people can, you know, make the most action happen. You know, think about the fact that in a, you know, in most major democracies, like the country I'm currently in right now, think about the fact that people don't vote for who they think is going to make the world better. They vote because they fear the other person will make the world that much worse. Fear is a much bigger driver, a much bigger call to action than happiness, than optimism, than hope ever can be. And that's something we need to readjust on the personal level. That's something we can't do on the collective level, but we really need to, right? We really need to get past the fear being the biggest driver, because that's what's leading to all of this xenophobia. And if you don't care about that, because you know what, who cares about you know, this whole group of people, which is, by the way, 1.3 billion people. But like, even if you don't care about that, even if you don't care about the, you know, the hit to the economy of not those places, but also the world as a result, which is going to cause a huge downswing, what you should care about is you should care about the fact that now, if something wants to market to you, it will use fear. This fear is going to be played on endlessly because it's the most effective way to get anything done. Whether that's marketing, whether that's you know, government policy, and even whether it's stuff like the news, which knows that all it can do every single day is play on your fears and you'll tune in. That's not how we should be. We don't want to be fearful. Being scared is not a good feeling. It's not a desirable thing, or at least it shouldn't be, in my opinion. And yeah, long story short, I think we should all be making decisions that are based on other things. You gotta realize that this is a thing we're all doing individually, but that is affecting us all collectively. And there's no easy way to say don't be fearful, because there's lots of things you should be scared of. There's lots of things we should be worried about. But is Corona Hill, Corona Heights, I think, Corona Park, is that one of them? Probably not. Is you know, the actual virus itself too, even if you aren't a beer drinker, is that something you should worry about? No. But what you should be worrying about is people using this fear to lead faulty information, because this is what's led to the whole anti-vax movement. You know, people are fearful of what will happen to their children. One of the biggest desires in a human's life is to reproduce, and when you put that fear, when you give them the idea if their child might die if something happens, even with no information to back it up, it works. That is why that is leading and growing. People have worked out the best way to market things, and we need to counter that. You need to unmarket things that are being marketed by fear, and you need to sell things on optimism. You need to think about learning. You need to look at all these other types of all these other ways of getting messages across and respond to them, and don't respond to anything that tries to use fear tactics and make you feel bad. Because, you know what, pro tip, if you don't let the world make you feel bad, then you won't feel bad, but also the world will stop trying to make other people feel bad. That's my impression, at least. Maybe it's not yours, but either way, I hope you'll enjoy this video. I have not ended up where I wanted to. I'm in a weird residential neighborhood, because apparently a lot of people live right next to Corona Park. I would be willing to bet that house values have gone down, because people are like, ooh, Corona Park. Don't know about that. I don't know for sure. I don't know how you measure something like that, because it's such a small number of houses. Clearly rich too. There was a dude with like a garden man. I want a garden man, just a dude to make my garden look nice. Or maybe if I don't hire a garden man, the Ooga Booga spooky monster will come and kill me. So yeah, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Just a reminder, liking the video is something that helps out. Actually, it doesn't help in the slightest, but it makes me feel good. It makes me realize that people like me. That is a dog sat at a car with, oh, that is adorable. You know what? Subscribe with notifications turned on if you like dogs, because they're adorable, aren't they? Isn't this the cutest thing you've ever seen? This is what you should be subscribing based on. Don't subscribe because you're worried that the global cartel of elites is gonna bring us all down, because, I mean, they will, but whether or not you subscribe isn't. I'm just joking. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Subscribe for more cute dogs, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.